Welcome back. You're still watching The Globe, and breaking news this evening, of course, is the arrest of Rajesh and Atul Gupta, who've been arrested in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And this has been confirmed by the Department of Justice, that issued a short statement earlier this evening saying that they had been arrested, and it appears that the authorities here and the UAE are in cooperation at this time. What does all of this mean? Well, let's speak to legal analyst, Advocate Mpiloenhle Baloyi. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the program. All right, I suppose for this arrest to take place, hello, Advocate, can you hear me? Just press your... Fantastic. Okay. So for this arrest to take place, I know that last year the Department of Justice was busy trying to get an extradition treaty with the UAE. Did that happen?
Yes. Thank you, and good evening to South Africa. This is groundbreaking news indeed, and we will remember that it's not the first time that South Africa finds itself in a similar position. We will remember that this also goes back to similarities with the Bushiri matter. And as a point of departure is on the broader topic of extradition, is the agreements between the parties and what those agreements contain, and how they'll be further implemented. So, like you said in your introductions, that there seems to be a great cooperation between the United Arab Emirates and South Africa at this stage, mostly because there is an extradition treaty in place between UAE and South Africa, which was ratified in 2018. So that agreement does exist.
All right. And then the arrest, they would have been affected on the basis of, is it the red notice that was issued a short while ago, a couple of months ago?
That's correct. Also, with the greater intervention of Interpol.
Yeah. All right. So the police in the UAE then, on the basis of a request from South Africa, if you see these people, please arrest them on our behalf. Is that essentially what happens? And then they... Yeah, carry on.
Excuse me for that. Essentially, that's how it works. And then, obviously, like in any other system, then the police would then hand them over to the correct authorities.
So what would that mean? Our police officers or officials will fly to the UAE and pick up the Gupta brothers from custody there? You know,
insofar as extradition is concerned, it's not that simple and straightforward. It's quite a lengthy process because there has to be a formal request from South Africa to Dubai.
Right.
And that will be a process mostly championed by the Department of Justice. They have already offered a very brief statement, but perhaps as early as tomorrow, if not already, we will begin to see the wheels turning in that direction. And maybe to give a bit of highlight on what extradition actually entails. Now, just think of children playing in your yard, and then one of them does wrong. And instead of facing the punishment that you want to carry out, they run next door. Okay. And you're not able to get them. They run away from home and go to another house. So what this means is that we must now look at how do the two houses implement punishment on children that have done wrong. And can this parent request the other parent to say, bring back this child so that they can come and face a punishment in this home? So we have to look also closely on the laws between Dubai and South Africa, mostly pertaining to the crimes that the two accused must come back and face in South Africa.
All right. So I'm imagining now that the Gupta brothers have a right to apply to the legal process in that country to fight an extradition request.
No, essentially they can't, because what that is dependent upon is the terms of extradition between the two countries. And in light of the crime that they need to come and answer to. UAE and South Africa are in agreement, hence the cooperation that already exists. The events or scenarios where they would not be brought back is if, for example, there's no agreement between the two countries,
right?
And or if these people were to be sent back, they would face a punishment which is not offered by that country.
Okay.
And also, if maybe the punishment that they are going to face in this country is crimes against humanity, etc., and the list goes on.
Okay.
So it's a very lengthy process, and if we're going to compare it to the similar matters of extradition in this country, we still have certain accused which have not been brought back, even in the length of time that has already elapsed. So it's a process now where South Africa has to request them, and they begin now the legal exchanges. So we also expect to see a whole lot of jurisprudential development in this particular area of law, which is extradition. And we also expect to see broader definitions and proper implementation strategies, and also time factors to be considered under such applications.
So in this instance, would the Gupta brothers be held in police custody until the outcome of this process?
That's correct. Until the outcome of this process, which we would favorably anticipate that they would then be brought back, and then legal processes will then commence in South Africa, as they would normally have had they not escaped.
So if South Africa finalized their treaty, extradition treaty with the UAE last year already, why do you think it's taken so long to effect this arrest? Because I wouldn't think, maybe I'm guessing, but that they were hiding in Dubai. They probably were in plain sight.
It's not a safe speculation, because we're talking about two different things.
Yeah.
The signing of the treaty itself, which would be an international relations process. And remember, the treaty, we can't assume that the treaty was signed for the Gupta brothers.
Right.
We must understand that as an agreement between the two countries. And then the arrest is a different story altogether, because now, as I mentioned in the beginning, that it involved Interpol and obviously the internal crime mechanisms of the UAE.
All right. So what happens, let's say the Gupta brothers are found guilty here in South Africa. Their assets in Dubai, do they become part of a process with agreements between the two countries that South Africa can say, we found them guilty in a court of law here in South Africa, they've got all these assets in UAE, because of the arrangements that we have, can we repatriate those assets?
You see, that becomes a slightly different discussion altogether.
Yeah.
Remember, we have our own asset forfeiture systems in South Africa, and Dubai, the UAE probably has their own, and it would then maybe seek a deeper research into, insofar as the two positions are concerned, how are they then merged insofar as extradition is concerned. So we would have to look at the both, and then consider the Extradition Act of South Africa, the extradition treaty itself, and then we can say, where do their assets factor in?
All right. So how long do you think from today do this process likely take before we see the Guptas arriving at OR Tambo?
I honestly cannot speculate. Safe to mention that it's a very lengthy process, because I gave an example with the previous extradition matter that we currently faced in South Africa, and considering that, there's nothing developmental at this stage, insofar as that one is concerned. So, insofar as this particular one of the Gupta brothers, we can expect perhaps maybe a longer period. So I can't even mention years or months, but we may just say it's expected to be lengthy, but we anticipate that it will be done as expediently as possible. And as soon as the processes are in place, then that's a sign of hope. As long as something is done and the wheels begin to turn as soon as possible.
All right. I don't know if there have been extraditions between the two countries before, but does a case like this set a precedent going forward for future arrangements?
Look, it does, and as I mentioned, that as a legal practitioner, do expect a great sense of jurisprudence unfolding from these like matters, because it's beginning to be common.
Right.
So we have to actually strengthen our extradition treaties and look at most countries that we were dealing with, and to begin to foster those agreements for future references as well.
All right. Advocate Mpiloenhle, thank you so much indeed for joining us and giving us some insights on this big news. It certainly is quite a thing. Thank you so much for your time.